Good morning, everyone. I'm Noah Loy. I am a United States Space Force veteran. I'm a current systems engineer at Sierra Space, and I'm the program manager for AARG, the APUS Analog Research Group.
And good morning. I'm also from the United States, Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a United States Air Force veteran, an AMU graduate of graduate studies in astronomy, and I am an elementary school teacher. And I'm the chief of staff for our program. So really quick, I know many people haven't heard about us, and we're not as familiar as High Seas or the Mars Society. We are an academic group. We come from the American Public University system, which has two universities, American Public University and American Military University. I just put a couple of pie charts on here just to show our demographics. About 66% of us are actually active duty military. The school is completely online correspondence. We don't have a brick and mortar school. The building you see back here is actually our observatory. So the dome on the top is a remote telescope that we have for our space studies program. So mostly administrative offices for the faculty that work there. Also being an online school, we're mostly mature learners. We're individuals that are going back for higher education. We are already working in our career fields, or we've made the decision to go back for schooling. So our average age is in our mid-30s. And then again, kind of pinpointing the active duty military part, the tuition is very geared towards allowing military to afford going to school through our tuitions assistance programs. That's why our student body is largely veteran or veteran associated. And we are a global school because we're online. So we have individuals who are stationed or live all over the world that attend our school as well. This bottom pie chart here, you can see, is our 5 main schools that we have. We have art and humanities education, security and global securities. We have a small STEM group, health sciences, which includes our nursing school, and the School of Business Management. All right, so who are we? So as I kind of mentioned, we are the APUS Analog Research Group. We are student-ran, so all of our positions within our program are students or alumni. And we kind of bring our alumni into the program to help with our retention, kind of keep some of that institutional knowledge. And a lot of our alumni started their capstones or their thesis projects and continue them on after graduation. So that's why we still encourage our alumni to come back. So we're mostly students, teachers, and alumni. We launched in 2020. It was actually started by Terry Trevino there in the back with a few of our other graduate students and Bill O'Hare over here as well. I don't know if you've met Bill O'Hare, but he's kind of a big deal in our world. So right now we have currently about 200 students who are connected through ARG. They're either operating in program management roles, they either served as mission controllers, they work in our research teams, or they've been analog explorers. So this quick little pie chart here just kind of shows the different career fields and professions and backgrounds that contribute to ARG, that have that applied technical experience as well, which I think makes us really unique because, again, we're mature learners. A lot of us are veterans, either serving or have served. So we apply a lot of our technical experiences, our paraprofessional experiences, and then working in extreme environments like on deployments and combat zones. We kind of to try and bring in that analog experience to our studies. Our funding, so in the 4 years we've been as a program, our funding increases very slowly each year. We're not state funded. We don't have any huge grants or anything. So we started from $0, and currently we have about a $15,000 budget, and that's what we operate off of. So every year it gets a little bit bigger. So the School of Graduate Studies is our biggest supporter of giving us those faculty research grants that helps pay for parts of our fees to enter in facilities and sometimes our travel. So we only do about 2 missions a year, which is what we can afford to do. We also have our AIAA chapters and our SEDS chapters that do small scholarships between like $100 and $200 to help offset the costs of travel or research equipment. We also have WSTEM that provides like about a $100 scholarship to any of our female explorers. And then we just recently this year was awarded a NASA EPSCoR grant through the West Virginia Space Grant Consortium for our Spirulina project that we're currently doing this year on 2 of our Analogue missions. So our mission with ARG, again, our purpose is we are a volunteer extracurricular activity. We don't receive any credit to participate in ARG, so there's no educational award for that. It's really an opportunity for online students to connect and participate in research that would normally not be available to an online student, especially for someone who is pursuing STEM connected degrees or space connected degrees. Being able to perform research in the field is really paramount for that online learning experience, because you can do it on an analog or use the remote telescopes, go to places like MDRS or to ILMAH and have some really novel ideas to help push forward the space studies education. Our scope, like I said, is built completely around student education. It's for students, by students, and we have faculty that advise us to ensure that we're doing sound, safe, and credible science. The missions that we have, like I said, we have 2 a year. Sometimes we try to throw one larger one in there if we have enough funding to do so, and we try to seek partnerships with other academic institutions or other private partners. The roles that we have is we have analog explorers, we have mission planners, and then we have our researchers. And so I just want to emphasize the analog explorers. We don't call ourselves analog astronauts, mostly because that term was copyrighted by Sion Proctor a few years ago. So to be in line with NASA objectives, we consider ourselves either analog participants or analog explorers. And then again, just to kind of recap everything, our main objective is we want our students to publish. We want to connect and do outreach with like-minded individuals like yourself, communities, and continue our academic partnerships and just continue to foster that excitement for scientific knowledge. We're not going to get too deep in the weeds about how we're organized. One, we didn't have specific permission to do that because that's our intellectual property. But this is just kind of a brief organizational chart of how we are put together. So everything on this side under our program manager, Noah Loy here, these are, again, all students. So we have a chief of staff like myself that manages the program staff. So we have recruitment, our safety, risk, and mitigation, our communication and training leads. And then my counterpart then would be the chief of operations, and they manage all of the analog mission-specific things. And we have a flight director, and then we have a mission control lead. The flight director manages the crew commander, and the crew commander manages our other 3 mission specialists. And then we have a deputy flight director who will manage the operations specialists and the training manager assigned to that specific mission. Then the mission control lead will control basically all the mission controllers. And I would say that is our biggest bulk of our student body is our mission controllers, because again, we're an online school. We have a lot of remote learners. And I think now for 7i, we are about 42 mission controllers who are involved right now. So that gives us an opportunity to have 2-hour shifts constantly rotating 24/7 to maintain connection with the crew and kind of hopefully, keep people involved to get that spaceflight experience. And then off here onto the far side, we have our lead faculty advisor, which is Dr. Kristen Miller. She also manages other faculty advisors like Terry Trevino and Mr. Bill O'Hare, who used to be one of our faculty advisors. And then we have our research coordination team, who are the individuals that sit with the principal investigators and make sure that they stay on target to ensure that their research is sound. They have their IRBs completed. They have the equipment that they need, that they've thought, through every problem. And they also see them from cradle to grave. And then we have our subject matter experts. Our subject matter experts actually come externally from ARG, and we seek out professionals or other academics who specialize in specific fields. So if they have a background in physiology, kinesiology, if they have a background in EVAs, if they have a background in plant studies, we try to connect them with people who are experts in those fields to help them think through their projects and ensure that they're well thought. All right, and so our framework is we typically do 14-day missions. We have anywhere from 4 to 8 volunteers. That's mostly based around the facilities that we attend because, again, we don't have a facility. We bring the laboratory. Uh-oh, I'm so sorry. Push it in. I'm sorry. we take the student to the facility because we don't own one ourselves, and we make sure that it's a science-driven. It's not an experience. We don't want it to be like a space camp experience. We want it to be science-driven, science-sound, student-executed, as and then it's all ran by students, and then it's academically advised. And this is just a quick picture of all of our crew members. All right, so now we're going to talk about research, which is Noah's favorite thing to talk about, because we want to talk about all of the great research we do. Again, we don't have a facility to talk about. We are a very small academic group, and we go and do a lot of research. So again, in the 4 years that we've been an organization, we are just pushing out projects all over the place. And so we just want to give you kind of a brief highlight of all the different areas of discipline that we've been working in.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to highlight, guys, the U.S. is a giant country, very spread apart. So with American Military University and American Public University being the two conglomerates to make American Public University system, it's how we're able to reach across the aisle, across cities. Most of our student body is active duty. They're oftentimes deployed across the world. We're able to bring everyone together to focus on certain research, certain assignments, and deploy to certain some of our missions. So that is really the key of the APUS ARG system coming together.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'll just talk to this one real quick.
Cool.
So these next 3 slides just highlight the 3 facilities in the 4 years we participated in. And so those patches just show all the missions that we've had there. So we've been at the ILMAH habitat in North Dakota. We've had our first pirate mission earlier this year. And then also MDRS a year ago. Sorry to interrupt.
That's good. So this is our research projects to date. We've had 44, most of them being crew physiology, crew psychology. Also food systems and nutrition we've been investigating. Management operations, botany, habitability and habitat systems. EVA operations, we have some astronomy, suit ergonomics, education, outreach initiatives, and education research. So we usually have in our research process, students bringing forward subjects that they're passionate in. We'll run it by subject matter experts. We also have a lot of students, like we were referring to, that are very mature in their careers, whether it be military or civilian life. So they'll typically bring in some studies too from industry, and we'll test some industry hardware as well, depending on what's available at the moment. Our research process, we have our faculty advisor that will assign a research coordinator and a subject matter expert to each participant and to each study. We have our research lead, that's going to be the student or an alumni that is pushing the research forward, usually came forward with the idea, brought the parties together. And we'll continue that research. So oftentimes they're in the mission, sometimes they're outside of the mission and still leading the research and training the Analogue explorers. We have a research coordination team that'll be a research coordinator. They ensure that the study is on the correct timeline. They make sure that all the right stakeholders are involved throughout the process. They make sure from a quality standpoint that we're scoping all the hazards correctly, especially with where we're going and what that research is specifically. And then we have the SME, the subject matter expert, which is going to be one of the professors from our university or another university that's advising that student or alumni on their research project to get it as well equipped and ready for deployment to the field.
All right, so PIRATE is kind of a new idea that we have. It's a paired in-situ research analog, and so it focuses mostly on underwater habitats. And so we had gone to Aquarius a little over 2 years ago now to do the saturation diving and the hard hat. As you may know, the Aquarius is not in function right now, so we had to kind of redirect those assets towards a different underwater sea base, which ended up being Jules. So we had our first pirate mission earlier this year. So we had 3 Analogue students and a faculty member go down to Jules in Key Largo. They participated in a lot of safety training dives, and they spent 1 day in the underwater habitat. And so one really key point that we want to bring up is Pirate is kind of an offset from our standard Analogue mission rotations. We kind of use that as an individual focus. We parse out funding separate for that, and it really focuses on just like I said, the paired in situ environment, and we use that for underwater habitats. So we've only done it one time. We're looking for new habitats if they're out there, but we just wanted to highlight our pirate mission there. So again, just talking about some of the disciplines we have at astrobotany. So plant studies is really big in analogs. It seems like almost everyone's doing it because we want to know like food sustainability for long-term space flights and for interplanetary missions. So we've had a couple of things. I'm sorry, this thing keeps falling out of my ear. We've done some microgreens research. The algae spirulina research kind of speaks to that larger grant that we received earlier this year, led by Terry Trevino as the private investigator. And then when we were at MDRS, we used LDEF seeds as our plant study. So if you don't know what those are seeds that launched up on the space shuttle a few decades ago and were exposed to cosmic radiation and solar radiation for about a year, I think. And then we tried to test and grow them. So this is just a brief highlight of our plant studies, the ones that we could talk about, not all of them.
Psychological studies in confined spaces. So we spent a lot of time looking deep into emotional face recognition studies and time delay communication research. We want to examine how exactly time delays affects the fidelity of a mission and how it affects the stress of the participants in that mission, specifically with how they communicate back and forth with mission control and how orders are flown down from mission control to the participants and how they react in that time frame. So the flow chart would be an astronaut would identify an issue. They would send that issue in the data to mission control on a time delay, usually 20 minutes. Mission control, and we have a lot on the other end with a lead and a bunch of supporters, will analyze the data, reach out to subject matter experts, figure out what is the best path forward for that astronaut or that explorer, in that environment. And then they will respond with the actions forward, usually on a time delay as well. And the astronaut commander will go ahead and make that decision moving forward. We found that it's added a lot of stress to the environment. It's increased fidelity. And throughout our missions, we have worked to try to determine what's the best protocols for communicating back and forth between mission control and the analog explorers. NASA has something called Capcom Go, or Capcom, sorry, that's a legendary organization of mission control with previous astronauts communicating to the astronauts on board the ISS, flowing down that information from mission control, since they have that experience of what it's like in the ISS and have that experience of knowing on what's it like being an astronaut on the other side and receiving information. We've tried to portray some of the lessons learned there into our mission control experience, communicating with the analog explorers. Emotional facial recognition studies. In higher stress, higher fidelity environments, we wanted to see how in confined spaces, when you're blocked from the outside world, can you determine the correct expression on someone's face over time, and what is the accuracy there for identifying the emotional response coming from who you're communicating with. We've done some extensive studies there as well, and I won't get into the results.
Everyone's favorite, EVAs. Who doesn't like a good spacewalk? So we've had 3 big focuses on EVAs. One is enhancing the suit mobility using kind of a weight distribution system that's internal to the suit that lifts the suit off of the body and redistributes the weight into other areas. We have done contingency rescue, which is my project, my thesis project, trying to navigate NASA's requirement. I'm so sorry about the text. It doesn't look like that on my computer, but it's not coming out right today. NASA's contingency rescue protocols for its first lunar operations, and what are the best methodologies and assistive devices we can use to support a single person carry. And then we also have supply cache experiments. So if you guys have questions about supply caches, we have the PI here, Nick Pinder, who's also a SpaceX fellow, that can answer those questions.
So psychological research in confined spaces. We wanted to examine physiological, sorry. We want to examine how exercise routines and cardiovascular health is impacted in a confined space where you don't have a lot of mobility, you don't have a lot of time in the day to work out yourself and stay in the best physical shape. You're limited to the EVAs that are within the mission scope. So how is cardiovascular exercise impacted in that type of stressful environment? Also, what's the crossover with the different type of caloric intake that an explorer is ingesting from different sources specifically, and how is that impacting one's ability to exercise based on that diet? And then what does their fatigue like with both of those factors combined together with what they're digesting and also how they're exercising in different environments? Stress reduction. We've taken some time to look closely at how does breathing exercises and meditating impact crew dynamics and impact one's ability to conduct science, conduct their own research, and how does this impact their stress levels? Is it a study? Is it an activity worthwhile in your day to incorporate as an explorer? And would it be worthwhile for an astronaut to spend some time every day grounding themselves? Interesting results here. There's a lot of implication with crew dynamics, with coming together, with staying closely connected, understanding each other, and understanding the self, bringing yourself back to the why. Why are you out here conducting the science, conducting the research? Where's your passions lie? Essentially, get down to the why. And how does that impact your stress levels and your ability to execute on your mission, and specifically your study?
Oops, sorry, I think I went too fast.
Water electrolysis. So this is a fun one. Water electrolysis being the process of separating hydrogen and oxygen into those free radicals and isolating them through the process of electricity. The implications for this are huge, especially with the NASA Artemis program, as Artemis plans to go to the South Pole, the Shackleton crater, to collect water ice, use that ice as a resource for many applications. We wanted to study the process of water electrolysis, the efficiency with different electrodes, like platinum, ion, copper, and such, of different solutions, sodium hydroxide in that water. We really just wanted to look at how quickly can we isolate these free radicals and deploy them and use them. Isolating oxygen obviously is a big one needed. You don't want to rely too much on supplies from Earth, especially a supply that's very essential like breathing, when you can gather that from water ice. Also, isolating hydrogen is a good fuel for energy and fuel for your propellant. So the mission for Artemis, you want to make the Artemis base camp as sustainable as possible. You want to not rely on too much logistics from Earth. That's very expensive. And you want a closed loop process. There's also the option here for when generating oxygen and collecting it, and then astronauts breathing it. And the carbon dioxide could be collected and used for any astrobotany research and for your plant modules. So we've been looking closely into this process, how it can be the most efficient to be deployed for specific Artemis applications. Astrophysics. We've conducted some HADS variable star research with some unique goals. One of them being determining distances and locations of a HADS variable star relative to the stellar neighborhood around it. There's also a lot that you can learn from a HADS variable star from within that star's chromosphere and down to the different individual layers based on how luminous it is in its current cycle. So we looked at this closely. Sarah mentioned earlier we have the West Virginia Telescope and Observatory. We've used that. We've deployed some other telescopes as well. In some really remote locations in the United States where there's very low light pollution, and studied really the luminosity of a few different HAD stars and learned a lot about distance and the complexities of the star's upper atmospheres.
And I just want to interrupt Noah for a second. I think it's really exciting to talk about astrophysics in an analog environment, since that's what we're talking about, because so often it seems like something that's overlooked, but you can still do a lot of great astronomy even during analog. So that's why we've been capitalizing on some of those remote telescopes when we're deployed into the field, so we can continue some of that astronomical research.
Yeah, and it's also fun for the crew. Because you can take some time off and look at a few other areas of interest. That usually excites the crew and boosts morale. We've also have conducted a lot of solar research studies, and if you could think about the why, there's a few. One of them being, if you're on a Martian analog and maybe there's a solar storm, there's a solar flare that cuts off your communications with mission control, and there is about a month when the sun is between the Earth and Mars, where you would not have communications with mission control unless you had some type of Artemis research outpost. But at the moment, you would have about a month of communications going silent. Would the astronauts be able to watch the sun and determine if there are any solar flares coming their way, or if they can examine the solar environment to see if there's any risk to themselves and their systems without the help from mission control? There was also some implications here with understanding the peak of solar cycle 25 in our specific research, and how solar storms can implicate Earth's orbital assets, and what we can kind of do to protect that. That's a key interest of the United States Space Force too.
All right, outreach. So outreach is very near and dear to our hearts too, because it, connecting with others, connecting with communities, connecting with institutions and partners is how we not only expand our network, it expands our knowledge, and it also helps with our funding. So we do a lot of outreach. So our purpose and goal is always, again, to connect with the public, stakeholders, youth, and the scientific community. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know why it's cutting off at the bottom. And obviously to help, grow our investments and connections. And so this is just a picture of us. We started actually attending our school's commencements and having a table there for the School of Science and Space Studies and Graduate Studies. So this is us actually interacting with students and trying to do a little bit of recruiting. But the real payoff of this is the individual in the middle of this picture here is our school president. And so he was brand new. This is his very first commencement. He met us, never heard of us, and was so excited about what we were doing and seeing our documentary that he wanted to come on an analog with us. So actually, our university leadership is at an analog right now this week, participating with our explorers and our mission controllers right now. So that's going to do, I think, a huge payoff for us to help, again, with that grant funding and stuff. So again, it's about making connections and getting ourselves out there. And then we have our board of directors here, and then we also have Dr. Alban, who is the director of our space studies in our telescope. Another thing we're really excited about when we talk about outreach, we've had some really talented students who have made videos and documentaries about us. And so there is a documentary out there on us of our MDRS mission. A lot of familiar faces. You'll see me, Noah, Nick, Lex, Terry, Bill O'Hare over there in it. But we have a YouTube channel, and that's one of our big connections out there, is making videos of what we're doing. We have how to pack for an analog, how to eat for an analog, what sciences are we doing? We have them, a video camera tagging along with us everywhere we go. We have podcasts out there, and we try to bring that experience to others to see what we're doing and the science that we're doing, and allowing our researchers an opportunity to communicate, and articulate and give that out to the public for their consumption. In addition to connecting with our schools and stuff, our own schools, we like to connect with the youth a lot. As an elementary school teacher, every chance I get, I pipe in the elementary school, and those kids can't get enough of it. They love it. And so it's so great to have our explorers and our program management also participate in that, because it gets them real jazzed up, and they like to share their passion for science as well with young minds and stuff. So this is just a few snapshots of us speaking to different schools. And there's so many. I mean, we could go on forever with this. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, sure. So this is our pirate mission here, and it's actually our pilot pirate. It's the first time we deployed to any underwater analogous environment. We did some research. We did some outreach from. So to the left is our pirate, and I think that's 2i or 1i and 2i. These were some of our live feeds that we had with some of the owners of the habitats, some of the faculty and the research that were involved. We had some faculty actually involved in some of our missions here that was involved in the outreach. Anything specific you wanted to mention?
Oh, no, I just wanted an opportunity to talk. So I feel like I was hogging it up. So like Noah said, maintain those connections and outreach, even to get the schools involved. As you can see, here's a social media post that AMU did on our pirate mission. And so it was really exciting to have students go out there into an underwater hab and do science, So you're just encouraging that outreach. And then as you see in the corners here, this is where we're doing live feeds with, we have an MDRS cruise, and we did Hello World. That was our very first Analogue mission, and they called another Analogue, which was supposed to be on the other side, right, of the world, at MDRS. We have a live feed with our stakeholders. As you can see, all the comments and questions. People were very, very interested in what our explorers were doing. We had live EVA events where we actually took the public on a walk with us. We had cameras inside of the helmet and outside of the suits, and so people could experience what the explorers were doing in the suits and how they were viewing the world while we were doing a rescue. And the bottom image is just kind of showing us connecting with students. So that's most of our presentation. We are on social media. These are our handles that we have. If you want to communicate with us or follow us or partner with us, we always encourage that. One last thing we want to say is we really, really want to thank the very important people in our lives that have made all of this possible. Again, I don't know what's going on with the text. Her name is Dr. Kristen Miller. I don't know where it went. She has been here with us from the beginning and really advocates for us for funding and everything. Scott Van Hoy, who was one of our original founders, who still keeps tabs on what we're doing all the time. And then Terry Trevino as well as a co-founder, who brought us, here to CHASM and gets our name out there, and he's very influential with his LinkedIn connections. So we appreciate capitalizing on that, Terry. Thank you so much. So we're happy to take questions. This video is just going to play in the background, and that QR code, if you want to zoom in on it, will take you to the documentary that was made about us. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you so much for being here. It's really amazing what you're doing. All the research that you're doing is really incredible. It's such a fantastic effort. So I don't know if anyone has a question, or if you were too clear. There. Charlotte, oh my God, best student of the year, asking questions all the time. I love it. That's what we want.
If anyone else wants to go, I'm also fine. So first of all, amazing that you're focusing so much on the research. I really like to see that. I was just wondering, with the university, do you have an ethics board or anything that is approving your research?
Yes.
Or how do you... Okay.
Yes. So any research that has to do with human participants in it, obviously you are subject to an ethics board. It's called an institutional review board. We do have to file for that. It is reviewed, and we have to have approval before we can do anything else.
Okay, perfect. And in that regard, do you publish at the IAC as well? Or will you be presenting at the IAC, or do you publish in any other journals?
I don't know if we've been invited to IAC.
We'll be at IAC.
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, is that the one in Milan?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
No, that's not us. That's not us. Dr. Miller will be there. No, we're not invited to that one. Dr. Miller will be there. And we do have publishings. We thought about this last minute. We should have had a slide that we do have a lot of publishings, a lot that are out there. So if you want to connect with us, we can send you to a lot of those. We have a lot of blogs, articles, scientific journals. We're trying to publish as much as we can, but as you know, research takes a long time. So, my particular project took me 3 years before I could write a paper on it. So we have a lot of students that are kind of going through that right now. They're still kind of in the middle of the research that they're doing, and it's not quite buttoned up yet so that they can write on it.
Yeah, most of our research is deployed on multiple analogs. So a lot of this research that we're showing is still in development there. We spend our time on it before.
And that takes time because we only do 2 a year. So
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, about IAC organize every year the space exploration session. So I invite you, come. And often we give the space to last-minute presenters. And always I'd like to finish with young professionals presenting the results. And then I put them all on stage with the explorers companies. So if you have, in addition to Dr. Miller, other colleagues that want to join, it's a transformative experience, for young professionals to come to IAC. So please join in. The following year it will be in Sydney. So in Sydney also, let's try to organize a CHASM Australia at this occasion. On publication, so I indicated earlier that we have put with a journal called Space Science and Technology a special issue on Moon Mars research and Analogue. And for this, I ask all my students to submit a paper there. So there are papers of 10 pages, maximum 10 pictures. But we have also one format for junior or kid scientists. It's called a rapid report, a 4-page paper, 2-figure. And that's also a challenge, I think, that some of my high school kids took. And they have done their first publication submitted in these journals. If you're interested, that could be a nice to have all this short paper from a very diverse population of kids and young students.
Thank you.
I think one of the challenges, though, if I understand your statement correctly about encouraging publishing, that is a challenge for us, is, like I mentioned, many of our students, they're online, they're probably remote, they're probably deployed, they have jobs and families and things. And so doing something that's an analog is very, very extracurricular for them. And if they are attending school, they're all writing papers already, for their own discipline. So I think sometimes it's a little daunting to try and push publications. We want to encourage it, definitely. And we definitely want to encourage them to maybe take these analogs and use them as thesis projects, kind of like 2 birds with 1 stone. But I think our biggest challenge, like I said, for encouraging publishing or getting that executed is we have a lot of students that are, they have other obligations, professional obligations and personal ones that kind of trump their ability to focus on publishing.
But you have to be careful because young students are intimidated when you speak about publication. But if you give them an example, a template of a paper, they can figure out very well, okay, I put this there. So the special journal that we put, it has this structure. They don't have to invent a structure of a paper. And just they have so much material, they have pictures, they have data, and they can really, so I have some students that in 2 days could fill in this template and we reviewed with their co-author. So we have to be careful, science is not so difficult. Mm-hmm. Everybody can manage, especially they are much better in IT than some of us are. So they can figure out very well how to use a template and put some of the results they've obtained.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we do a lot of blog posts and a lot of articles for the school, so that kind of helps give the top level, discussion on those projects. We also do briefing proceedings, so if they do brief, we record those briefings and we put them in a scientific journal. Again, it's very kind of top level. We also just want to be really mindful of not creating any situations where people could be like self-plagiarizing or releasing information they're not ready to release, it's too preliminary, or if they're involved in like an EPSCoR grant, they're not authorized quite yet to release that information, so we have to be really careful. So again, we encourage it, we create opportunities. One of the things in our program, like connecting the students with SMEs and the research coordination team, is to help them with that publishing process. But again, we can lead them to the water. We can't make them drink it. So
but
one of our
it
challenges.
starts also with abstract. Abstract, I ask my students to write an abstract. So then they learn also, how to put together results, how to consult with the co-authors, how to submit it. And then, if they are selected, I give them a co-funding to attend the conference where they submit abstract.
Yes,
so
sir.
that's something, then they get the full experience.
Yes, sir. No, that's great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may ask a quick question.
Mic check 1, 2, 3.
I was curious about your electrolysis reaction. And I was wondering if you considered the fact that during microgravity environments, some of the reactions can behave differently. I think that was mentioned in one of the presentations yesterday.
Yes.
I was curious if that's something that you considered.
It is something that's considered, and it's a really good question. The applications in our electrolysis experiments are intended for a base camp specifically, so something to be conducted on the moon, probably at a location like Shackleton Crater is what we're looking at. So yeah, all of our methodologies and the entire research was intended to be in some gravitational field. Yeah.
And to your knowledge, do you know if the chemical configuration of water itself might have a possible difference?
Yes.
Versus-
Can't go too much into that yet, but we've tried different solutions with water. Obviously, just in water, it's the slowest at separating those free radicals, but we've tried things like sodium hydroxide and a few other items. Just waited to publish on that before speaking too directly into it. But yeah, that's exactly what we're thinking about. And when you introduce new solutions, it creates a different efficiency process depending on your amplitude of the current. But yeah, that's what we think about for sure. Good question.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I have a small question. So again, it's the same question regarding the water electrolysis. So you might already know that green hydrogen is going to be a very important player in the climate change application, which is also by electrolysis of water. And so for producing green hydrogen, we need an electrolyzer. And I work on that. I do research on mechanics of electrolyzers. So did you also use something like that? And if so, what did you see in the mechanics of this electrolyzer in zero gravity conditions?
Well, we haven't studied that in zero gravity conditions. There's been a few studies in the ISS that we can point to. We've actually created the equipment ourselves. So it's nothing that's out on the market. We've tried a few different techniques, and I won't talk to those specifics. But when we're building the equipment, the main question is what kind of an electrode are we using, and how much surface area are we able to cover to have the most efficient process? So you can kind of think of how it's configured in that sense, very wide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. This one or this one? Okay, so this is the sound check for my presentation. So hello, Florian. I've talked to most of you already. Thanks for the excellent presentation, and all the impressive scientific and educational work that you do. Coming from Austrian Space Forum, doing high fidelity mission, and spending a fair amount of time actually training people both on the Earth side and Mars side on operations, on procedures, on kind of chain of command, communications, and radio and so forth. And realizing that we're actually doing a civil basic training with more or less all the participants that we want to have involved in the mission. So, is there anything apart from obvious derivations, obvious procedures that are used in the space sector that come from the military originally, like the language, the proverbs, whatever? Is there anything that you can bring to the table in terms of just your regular day-to-day conduct of your analog missions that you might not even kind of be aware, because it's kind of second nature to you, all having more or less served or kind of been in the military first? So is there something that you can think of that might be interesting to proceduralize? We've been talking about this sign language stuff in the parastronaut panel yesterday, and I know that's something that squads use in the field, communicating verbally. Is there anything down that kind of alley that we might not be aware of in this sector that you guys might use unconsciously in your missions?
Most certainly, and I'll let you answer that. But what I will say is there's a lot of crossover, one in ARG from all of our military experience in the field, in the analog field. Also, there's a lot of crossover between NASA and deployments and search and rescue missions, ISR, et cetera, that crossover to EVAs and the NASA environment. But I'll let you take that.
Okay, I think I understand your question. So, one of the things you learn in the military is our two objectives are to communicate and execute. Right? Yeah. So it's effective communication so you can execute the objective. And so I would say from the communication perspective, we're used to kind of a certain operating standard, right? That we're task oriented and we want to hit these objectives and these targets in a certain way. And so that's kind of how we operate. Sometimes you can have conflict in that if you have, your civilians, who are primarily civilians, being involved because they're not used to that form of communication. So maybe it comes off aggressive, or it's not clear to them, but it's clear to us. I wouldn't say that we use any specific jargon or anything, but I would say a lot of methodologies that we use to execute tasks definitely kind of cross over from the military into the analog. I think one big benefit, because we have a large veteran base, it's easy for a lot of us to communicate together, because I would say, 2/3 of us would be military with the one offset, so it's probably a learning curve for them, but it's also important for us to remember how to communicate with everyone, not just people who are like us. And so being able to have that crossover when we have civilians who don't have a military background, that haven't been deployed, that don't know what it's like to be in confined or isolated environments, where we can learn to communicate effectively with them and how we can mentor them and bring them into the fold as well. And then we have a lot that we can learn from them too, with having patient communication and empathy and things like that we kind of become sterile to after being in the military. So I don't know if that quite answers your question or not. Like I said, having the military mindset can be very effective in certain environments, but not in all. And so I think sometimes we have to remember to take a step back and say we're not in a deployed situation, but we are in an isolated environment, right? And not everyone here is wearing a uniform and a bulletproof vest, right? We're wearing spacesuits and we have a science objective, right? So we can use some of those communication methodologies and task orientation to execute those tasks, but being mindful of the why of why we're here and what we're doing. We want everyone to be successful. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much actually, because this is like once you adopt some of these strategies and some of these modes of thinking, you actually resort to them when in stressful situations, like also when like commanding or steering people. So the us versus them thing that you just kind of hinted off is like something that we usually see between like the two planets, but also kind of within the field crew, so to say. There would be some that are like more experienced, more sort of tactical in their approach, and others that would not be used to this way of thinking. So I'm glad you kind of shared this observation that there's kind of a natural, like a core group that will kind of sense that there's a common understanding of how to conduct things, and they will kind of naturally take charge, and this will kind of make it more difficult for like a more novice member of the team to kind of find their spot or actually kind of know what to do. And also we haven't talked about like first aid and stuff like that. That's also something that's like deeply influenced from learnings from the military. Okay.
Yeah. So those experiences, like tactical care in the field and things like that, and it can be very paramount. But I would also say there's a lot that we can learn from the civilian side, where we can be kind of desensitized. We're like, that's not that big of a deal because I've been shot at. For them, it's a really big deal, and they're trying to remain in the simulation. And we're like, wait till you get, shot at, type of thing. So I would say it's a great handoff to have that relationship and to understand it, because they can really kind of ground us where we can stay calm, as well in those more serious environments.
All right, thanks. I think that answers the question.
Okay.
Thanks for the transparency.
Okay, so I think we're going to switch to the next presentation. Fantastic presentation. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you all.